Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Today, I will be discussing how to translate a text from English to Spanish. Now, before we jump right in, I just want to go ahead and quickly say that any good translator is going to go ahead and read the source text and determine whether they understand it or not. If they don't understand it, they will stop in their tracks and will not translate that text. That does go to say if you're not a bilingual speaker or you don't have an advanced or fluent understanding of the languages that you're dealing with, in this case, English or English and Spanish, this set of instructions might not be very useful to you. But if you do understand both languages to a good extent and you're up for the challenge, well then we can go ahead and dive in. I sort of follow a set of instructions that I've developed in my experience as a translation student, and it's worked for me in the different projects that I've worked on. So you want to read the text and make sure that you understand it. That's the very first thing you got to do. Once you understand it, you can fully prepare yourself to make the first draft. Now, the one thing that I like to do is make sure that I have all the things that are gonna help me translate. I guess like my translation tools. Um, for sure, the internet is probably the biggest tool out there. I got terminology databases. This one, the European Union, is really helpful. Different websites like wordreference.com. And I also want to say that this Oxford Spanish Dictionary is in my arsenal. This has been one of the best tools in my translation career. I highly recommend it. As you can see, I'm looking at it on Amazon. It's only $40 if you buy it new, used 22 maybe. But you just want to have all the things that are going to help you translate at your disposal, like right next to you, open on a browser, so that way you don't have to get that later on in the middle of translating because then you lose your train of thought and all that. All right, so once you have all the materials you need and once you read the the source text, you can go ahead and push pause right now, take a moment to read it. What we're reading is a little excerpt from the Complete Illustrated Handbook of Survival by Antonio Ackermans et al. It's a book that deals with different things, different scenarios that I guess will come in handy in self preservation, from how to start a fire, how to build shelter, um, how to find food, water, and even surviving in the city. Um, that's that's where this excerpt comes from. It's basically giving advice to women on what to do when dealing with sexual offenders. To begin the first draft, you can go ahead and just put anything, I guess. The real trick here is just to get started. Doesn't matter, it's just the first draft. It doesn't have to be perfect. All right. Um, let's see. Um, el efecto. Sometimes you might get stuck on a word. Like this one is what is it? Agoraphobia. It's a special term from psychology. I'm not exactly sure how you spell it in Spanish, but that's why we have our dictionaries and our terminology databases. Um, this one really comes in handy, but for for the sake of this video, I'm just gonna quickly search it up on Word Reference. The cool thing about Word Reference is that itself it has like you know things from definitions, synonyms, and Spanish conjugations, and other world languages. It's a really useful tool that has helped me a lot. So we're gonna do the translator, I think, like the English to Spanish dictionary that they have. Agoraphobia. Okay, right here. Fear of open spaces. Okay, yeah. And that right there is the term that we're looking for in Spanish. Obviously, if you have second doubts, you can go ahead and try a different terminology database or a different dictionary. But since we're just working on the first draft right now, we're just going to go ahead with the first thing that pops up, and then we'll fix it later if we have to. However, I'm pretty sure that's the right terminology and spelling for this word. All right, that about covers it. So, if your draft isn't the same as mine, say you use a different word, maybe your sentence structure is different, or you get stuck on a certain part of the translation, don't be afraid. This is where the break comes in, because after you first write your first draft, you just want to get something on the paper. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just want to get something on there that you can work on. After you're done with that, I would recommend taking a break, um, maybe a couple hours, maybe a day. It's honestly up to the person, to the translator, however urgent the work needs to be finished. It's really something relative to the individual. In this case, it's a very short, simple translation. It's not a very hard text to understand. So maybe take like an hour or so, maybe two, and then come back to your first draft. Maybe read the source text again, read this, just keep reading it, and really focus on what needs to be worked on. Um, so from here, I can already tell that I should probably format my my first draft, kind of like how the source text looks. So maybe some indentation here, and then if in case you don't have, I mean, more than likely you don't have the book on hand that we got the excerpt from, you'll notice that this last fragment is supposed to be in italics, like that. So now, after we format it, it looks a little more, it looks closer to the source text. It'll be closer to being ready as as a final product. So let's just nitpick some little things that we could change, make it into the second draft. For example, oh, here we go. This word right here, or this phrase, agresión sexual, from sexual assault. Okay, so I'm just gonna highlight it really quick. Something that we could probably change it to might be oh wait, that's a fail. There we go. I think we might go with this for like the final translation, but for now, I'm just gonna leave it like that. Maybe we can get rid of this word right here. Yeah, like after reading it over, perhaps también, the word también may not belong there after all. We could probably get rid of siempre here. Okay, this right here. Arma improvisada. We could probably change that to como una posible arma. Hold your keys ready in your dominant hand as a possible weapon. It probably that like changing it to this phrase would probably be more authentic, more closer to the original text. I initially put arma improvisada because it's talking about keys being used as a possible weapon. You know, it's an improvised weapon. That's the first thing that came to my mind during the first translation, just to put it out there. But perhaps we might have to be a little more faithful to the original text. These are questions that we have to deal with every time that we translate. Should we be more faithful to the original text, or should we, change a couple things, the phrasing maybe, and come out with something slightly different? That's something fascinating about the art of translation. Not a lot of people see. But anyways, as you can tell, we've dissected our first draft. We made a couple changes, possible changes, but I think they have, they have some ground to it. Like, so we're just gonna go ahead and do that. And everything that we changed, we're gonna go ahead and put it like that. Perfect. And now you go ahead and read. Like this right here is the second draft. So you go ahead and read it and see if it sounds good. See if there's anything else that you need to work on. In my opinion, it already looks pretty good, but you always want to polish it even further into a more perfect draft, which would be your final one, in that case, there's nothing else here that we can really do, since through our biased eyes, this might seem, like a good enough translation. But the important thing about networking is that we can always email it to one of our translator colleagues or somebody that might be fluent in both English and Spanish, have them take a look at it. Hopefully somebody that has a deep knowledge of grammar in both languages, but even if they're not bilingual, say that they're just proficient in Spanish, they can go ahead and still look at this and maybe give you their opinion of like, oh well, maybe this part doesn't make sense or whatever. Maybe you could use this different phrasing or word, whatever it may be. It's always good to get a second opinion, just so you can polish your work further, because at the end of the day, this is what you're gonna do for a living. You're doing this as a professional, so you always want to put out quality work. All right, so after you polish your final draft, say that you find other things to work on this, or a colleague helps you out, you polish your draft, you get the final product, the target text, and you're pretty much done. But yeah, thank you guys for joining me in this short presentation about how to translate a short paragraph from English to Spanish. I hope my method works for you guys.
Ay, I like bitch, you was your mess. Ay, can't keep my dick in my pants. Ay, my bitch don't love me no more. Ay,